Hello, I'm Arthur Davis, and this is my evaluation presentation of my performance and production of Love and Information by Carol Churchill. I thought I'd start off because the play's separated into separate scenes. I'd start off by just going through each scene that I was in and kind of saying my individual processes for each and maybe some things that I've noticed across separate scenes. So, my first scene in terms of the script, obviously the actual play itself can be performed in any order, but our production of it, we just everything went from A to B. We didn't move it around too much. We didn't play with that too much. Apart from we used some of the scenes at the end in the middle portion, which I think worked well, especially on screen, and I think it really added something to my scene Terminal because it really related to what we were talking about in the scene. So I think those things really did help, but we didn't overuse them too much, mainly because we thought we had a time restriction, but some other groups didn't. But hey ho. But anyway, my first scene was Torture, which was actually filmed. I performed it with Sharbel. I think having the main benefit of that scene was that at least towards the end we realised that there was a key point of change, which was when me and Sharbel both realised we can torture this guy, and that's what we're going to do. So I think knowing that there was going to be that moment of switch is at least what I used to ground the scene really with. With all the scenes that I filmed, I found it difficult in the moment to be truly feeling the character, mainly because, especially with Torture, it was quite last minute. We were like scrambling to find a spot. So, and I understand that is often the filmmaking process, and you kind of just need to, get over it. But I think especially with Torture, just because it was so last minute, I don't know if in the final film it was the best that I could have done. But I think it was a pretty good job. Next scene that I was in was Remote. This was with me and Matt, and I really liked this scene because it felt really gentle and really honest, and I think that's what at least I tried to keep, was that this guy was just a gentle soul. That was my main view of him, was that he was a gentle soul. Also, this was the first scene where I did an accent. I did a Cornish accent, which that wasn't my attempt of a Cornish accent. I'm not going to do that, but I think that did help. It definitely gave me a point to focus on, which I find is key with all my characters. I kind of need one, whether it's something to do with costume, which we didn't really use. We did a bit actually with like hats and glasses, but I feel like I need, especially in this scene or in this play, with such short periods of characters, having one thing that I could be like, this is the main point that I can work on, and then other things come from that. So for this, it was the accent, and also having my hair down, because that kind of it just gives me like a stiffer neck because I'm so conscious of it coming down and looking all greasy. So I think those two things really helped. Then was Terminal, which I talked a little bit about before. But even though Terminal was such a short scene, I really felt, because I felt connected to it, because I have some, not with, but as almost everybody does, we know someone who's had a disease or been given information like this featured in this scene. So I was able to relate to that and use that experience, I think, quite effectively. But also with this scene, I played it I tried it a few different ways. First, I tried it kind of like he didn't understand the information, which was correct, because at the time, none of the company we didn't really realise what the words were actually saying. Which I think is really clever writing, because that is originally what you'd think is, what the hell are you saying? But we eventually realised after time that Izzy's character was actually being quite nice. So I think that it then changed to a more sincere scene. There was a week or so where I went a bit overboard with it, but that was just a bit of play. Then was God's Voice / God, because these were the only characters. I mean, to start off with, it helped me to visualise them all as the same character. because just I don't know why, but it just helped to kind of move them all around, and then I could see just one person. But then I realised that wasn't really working towards the end. But with God's voice and God, I could carry it over, and it did. I think that character is the most most well-rounded of all the characters that I perform in this production, because it's in two scenes, so I get to think about them more. I get to know more about them, and it's God's voice especially really keyed me into picking up on cues and lines and knowing when to come in, because so much of the dialogue is so snappy in that scene, or at least it moves from being snappy to less snappy, which was nice because you get to play a variant. For this character, I actually gave him a secret of being an alcoholic, and this is one of the secrets. These are one of the characters that benefited from having that, especially moving into God, because A, he's drunk in that scene, so it clarifies it a little bit more in my head, and B, it also opens up the idea that he is interested in this, in religion, because quite a lot of AA is quite interconnected with religion, not in a huge way, but there are lots of similar beats, and they do kind of follow similar paths. Also, with God, I did find myself having a bit too much fun with it, probably, just because I like being it, or it's very easy for me to be big and loud when that's not necessarily the best thing for the scene or for what's going on. Then was dinner. That was this dinner, and there were a couple of scenes, dinner and small thing, that were so short. I found it almost hindering to give them a whole big story, if I'm honest, because I don't know, it just, having that one point of focus was quite beneficial, especially in small thing. With dinner, I did actually in my head I changed what I thought, how I thought the information was being received, from a more like genuine sorry to a sarcastic one. But because they were so short, I'll be honest, I found it difficult to generate a whole life for them outside of it and ask myself the questions that I asked for the other characters. But yeah, maths was fun. That I found it kind of difficult to get to be, I don't know what the word is. I just found it a bit awkward with Izzy, because she's a mate and we had to be flirtatious. But once we got cut that barrier, I think that scene really took on a life of its own, and that was a scene where asking myself all the questions. Who is this guy? What does he do? Where does he come from? What's he been doing? What's he going to go do later? Really benefited me. So I think this has taught me in a way that not every character that I play is going to require the same process. It will require the same effort, but not every character will require me to ask these types of questions or do this process. So I think it was really helpful for having variety in your process, which is something that I think is just beneficial. So overall, I mean, there are a couple more scenes, but basically, it's all it's all the same sort of things. Asking myself the questions. Hot seating was really beneficial, especially for Earthquake, which I didn't mention, but just because I didn't know anything about them, and having questions that I hadn't thought of just jolts things in your mind and makes you kind of think about, maybe this and this. And Earthquake was also really useful when I used a secret. We did a run where I'd been given a secret that there was a girl upstairs, and having that secret that made that character for me, because now I knew I had something to do, whereas before I was just reacting purely to Amelia, which it's fine. I think my main focus was to try and keep the characters separate, and then also, and this should always be my focus because I'm not very good at it, is controlling my breath and not just relying on having a deep, loud voice, which I think I can sometimes rely on it a bit too much, rather than actually projecting, if that makes sense. And I think that's something that I will have to focus on, and make sure I keep. Yeah. Thank you very much.